Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. So today's topic is trainer education, and we're going to discuss training around limitations. So this topic came up recently. I have a client. She has to go in and get surgery on her foot, and it has some do with some bone deformalities due to running and just wear and tear in life. So she has to go and get some surgical corrections on the bones, and it's going to limit our training in the sense that she won't be able to put pressure on her foot for quite a few weeks. And then, of course, there's going to be kind of a progressive overload requirements from there to get her back to normal weight loads for exercises such as like leg press and barbell squats and deadlifts and stuff. So we've been talking about how she can still train and be active in the sense that she does have a foot issue, which you would say, oh, okay, well, she'd be fine training upper body. Well, not really, because seated cable rows, for example, she would have to be able to brace with her foot to be able to do that exercise correctly. Obviously, any standing upper body exercise she can't do. There's going to be some other limitations here or there as well. So we were going through kind of what were the exercises she could do, what were the things we would look to kind of avoid, and then even training techniques within the sense that if she's hobbling around on crutches and having limited mobility, maybe once she got herself onto a machine, it might be nice to find techniques that allow her to just kind of stay on the machine for a little while. So, for example, we're not going to be doing a 3-exercise circuit if she has to kind of hobble around but try to get from exercise to exercise. So we used, for example, a technique called number goal, which is multiple rest pauses. So you would have a predetermined number that you would try to aim for, but with a weight load that would take multiple bouts of effort to get to that number rather than one continuous effort. So, for example, you could have somebody find like a 10 rep good form max, like good form failure. They would do it for 10 reps, maybe take like 3 to 5 second rest, try again. Maybe they get 5 or 6 reps, take 3 to 5 second rest, try again. Maybe they get to 20. So you would tell the client, okay, I want you to do 10 rep max to a 20 rep total. And that would be kind of what they would do is rest pauses from there. So we talked about how to do different weight load and rep parameters to focus on strength or muscle damage or muscular endurance or cardiovascular endurance, and what exercises would work best for which of those kind of categories. So for example, we might not want to do like a 4 rep max on like an adductor machine. So there are different combinations and pairings that would make more sense or less sense. So that's what we did with that client, and she actually trains with her husband as well. So it was kind of figuring out how can we still get the husband a great workout, how can we get her a workout that doesn't overdo anything, how do we not lose any body parts, how do we still train the legs even though she can't put her foot down, so you can still do leg extensions, leg curls, inverse curls. There's a lot of other things we can do as well. You can still do core, you can still do upper body. For example, assisted pull-ups and pull-downs don't use any foot pressure really. So we were just trying to find different movements like that, and we were able to do so, put together a good program for her. And then, like I said, that's what kind of prompted the idea for a podcast based on how to train around limitations. And what's interesting is, over the years of being a trainer, as you would kind of encounter each new circumstance, that then helps you learn how to build onto a next circumstance. So I've had people in the past where we couldn't have heel pressure. One was a swimmer that had nerve impingement issues in their foot, and they couldn't put their foot down. So all their dry land work was a freaking pain in the butt, but we still got it in. I had a bikini athlete who had did her ankle surgically repaired in the middle of prep, and we still wanted to prepare. We still wanted to do the show, so we had to figure out a way to work around that. So what you'll find is in those circumstances is what was needed to help the bikini athlete work around ankle surgery was very similar to what was needed to help the swimmer work around nerve impingement, which was very similar to helping the most recent lady. Now, you'll find this as a trainer is the more you invest into your initial experiences, the more you'll learn for future experiences. So something I've always considered in my own journey has been no matter what injury I had, there was never a reason to stop training. So I've been lifting weights now for 20 years. And in 20 years, I've only ever taken 7 consecutive days off twice. So I've only ever taken a whole week in a row off twice in 20 years of lifting weights. And that would include times where I've had muscle tears, I had surgeries, I had illnesses, like anything that would typically happen in someone's life within 20 years has happened. And yet I've been able to remain consistent with training. Now, part of it is because I find emotional and mental benefit to training. So it's not a tedious, like laborsome task for me. I actually enjoy doing it. I like the challenge that training and hard training presents. And I feel like it makes me stronger and more capable to handle regular life. So there's a lot of emotional and mental benefit, in my opinion, to exercise, which is why I've been able to stay so consistent with it over the years. So as a trainer, one of the biggest things I'd really promote is understanding that no matter what the limitation the person has, it's your job to help them find something. Motivate them, keep them active, keep them busy, find something, find anything they can do, and then do the hell out of it and make some progressions. So another example is I've had clients in the past with various limitations to spinal loading and spinal movement. So for example, like neck fusions, low back fusions, slip discs, crushed discs, you name it with the discs, just all that stuff. And it's been, people like some military people I've worked with, jumping out of planes, jumping over walls, whatever they do, they got hurt and injured. I had people with like different back-related injuries due to work, just due to regular life, other odds and ends, sports and whatnot. And they'll have a lot of restrictions, and you just have to kind of adapt and find out what can still be done. So one of the signature pieces we have in Brutal Iron Gym is actually a belt squat that my dad made for us. So I remember I had a client, his name was Dave, and he had a pack sewn into his low back that helped with pain management in regards to spinal pain. And I believe it was a pack to where like it would release medicine or do some kind of effort towards helping him. However, we could never put anything on his spine, either like on the top of the spine pushing down through, like for example, like a squat, and we couldn't put anything on his lower back. So we couldn't do a leg press because we couldn't let the lower back be pressed into the seat. We couldn't do half squat, couldn't do leg extension. If he did a lying leg curl, it was horrible for him to try to get into position because he felt it pried his lower back open. So we couldn't do a seated hamstring curl because he couldn't get back rest. So holy freaking crap, we were limited. Now there was stuff we could do. You can do like step ups, you can do lunge variations and yada, yada, yada. But we did have a lot of limitations. So I remember at the time it was kind of newish for the gym, so I didn't have a lot of money. I was paying off loans and shit. And I remember I told my dad, I said, hey, there's a machine called a belt squat that this would absolutely help because the belt would rest underneath where the pack is on the guy's back. And I said, but Dad, these are like $3, $4, $5 grand. I can't afford it. You think we can make one? So we went ahead and made one, and we actually made one of the first models that I'm aware of that has a dip assist and a pull-up assist feature to it. So you can, on our belt squat, you can line up for different pull-ups, you can line up for dips. We even have a seat, an adjustable height seat that is attached to our belt squat. We have band peg capabilities. We also have a pin placement. So if you look at like the typical models of like Westside Barbell, they basically have like 2 places you can catch the sliding plate, and they're never where you want them to. So you either have to squat down like to the floor, or you have to do like tippy toes to try to rack the thing. So we made ours where it racks in basically every 2-inch segment. So it's a pretty cool feature. But that piece came from necessity. So the client had issues, they had spinal load concerns, so therefore we worked around it, we found a way. And if we couldn't have afforded the machine, I'm sure I would have found something else. But we were fortunate enough to be able to afford to make the machine ourselves. And we actually made a pretty kick-ass version to compare to what's out there nowadays. So what that showed me, though, was if you keep an open mind and you keep experimenting, you can find more and more and more options. So, for example, I've told people before, there's actually over 50 ways to do leg extensions. So just in our one leg extension machine, there's actually 50 ways to do leg extensions. So if you get creative with like different techniques of like rest pause, drop set, partial reps, slow eccentrics, isometrics, you can do banded, not banded, you can do unilateral, you can do bilateral. So there's a lot of variations when you start being creative and start really thinking it through. So if you are a trainer, or if you're a trainer and you have a client who has physical limitations, or you yourself are facing physical limitations, remember that there is always something you can still do. You want to make sure that you don't focus on what can't be done and instead place your focus on what might still be possible. What can I still do? So we've had people with even more kind of different limitations than what people would typically think of. So when you think of when you think of limitations, we tend to think of physical. Well, I've trained people with cerebral palsy, where there's a lot of neuromuscular issues, and they don't have a lot of muscular control in terms of like mid-range strength. It's kind of all or nothing. So if they're going to move a machine, they're going to freaking slam it and move 1,000 miles an hour. So they have to sometimes be careful if they do handshakes or hugs. They can often like crush somebody's hand a little bit when they're trying to give them a handshake. But I've trained people with various physical kind of neuromuscular type disorders, and there's still always something to do. So the person with cerebral palsy, we found out basically that they didn't really need to warm up. So I remember the first exercise I did with them, I put him on a seated overhead press machine. And I was like, man, he looks like he's about this strong. Maybe he can do like 80 pounds for probably around a set of 10. Let me just put 40 on and tell him to do 10 just to practice. Well, I put 40 on and he slammed the machine to the very top because there was no middle ground. It was just the muscle was going to fire or it wasn't going to fire. So we had to realize that I had to change the way that I warmed him up. I still couldn't like put 1,000,000 pounds in the machine and risk hurting him, but I found out that I didn't need to be as nice in the warm-ups as I would be with anyone else. So his muscles were already tight, connective tissue and everything's already kind of like so bound up and ready to go. So we did do lighter sets before heavier sets, but we might have went to like a 90% of their best as kind of that as a warm-up, whereas for most people you might do 50 to 70% as a warm-up. We also found out the machines were definitely better than any kind of free weight stuff. So this client had hand deformalities, so where they couldn't really hold on to like a free weight very well. But we found out if we got them onto a machine and they kind of got a chance to work their hand in a certain way, they could kind of maintain tension and make it work. So even with somebody with like neuromuscular type movement issues, there's still something. There's still always something you can find. So I've trained clients with depression, and we had to work around that. So kind of like they knew they needed to get out of the depression. They knew they needed to be physically active, but they had no motivation. They would find themselves really not going to the gym. They wouldn't really be kind of sticking with it. And those have been very, very hard times, but that is definitely a limitation. So we found like at-home workouts where they were supposed to text every time they did a workout. So they would text in the morning when the workout was planned to be done. So every morning I would get a text that said, say like 10 a.m. And then around 10 a.m. I would text them back and say, workout, ? And they would either text back like doing it now or not really feeling it. And then I'd text back, you should do it, just do it, shut up and do it. And it was different ways of talking. Like we found, what type of language worked best for that client, whether it was, foot in the ass type kind of motivation, or whether it was like, kind of just reasoning in with them, talking about what can be done, what's the smallest degree of effort we can do that counts towards something. And then we would just build over time. But we had to have a higher degree of accountability, higher degree of motivation from an external source to get them to get the ball moving and get them going towards their goal. I've had clients with anxiety problems, and for example, they couldn't train inside if the gym was busy, so we would often take our stuff outside, and we might like limit the amount of movements that I had to try to teach them. So for example, I would find one exercise, and then we just do a bunch of variations of that. but they found that calmed their anxiety than trying to rather learn 5 or 6, new things with everybody watching, quote unquote. No one was really watching them, but they felt like people were watching them. They felt like people would judge them. What if they looked like an idiot? Da 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 da. So we tend to kind of exclude ourselves a little bit. We tended to kind of just learn one new thing at a time, workout. I've even had a client who had a phobia of mirrors, and they would not work out if they could see themselves in the mirror. So we found, a corner of the gym here, a corner of the gym there. We got away from the mirrors, and we still found them a way to be active and continue to move. So there are an enormous, and I would say an infinite list of limitations that are possible. And in the 18 years I've been a personal trainer with over 2,000 clients, I have seen a ridiculous amount of them, but I'm still constantly surprised every now and then by something new. So the key is, when you're thinking about training around limitations, is you can definitely eliminate the things that you can't do. But you immediately have to start looking at, what are the things I can still do? Now, there isn't an amazing resource in my mind of what, okay, go to this YouTube channel or go buy this book and it'll show you how to exercise. If you have, like I trained a client one time that had no hand. So they had lost a hand in like a work accident or something, no hand whatsoever. And we had to find a way to still train upper body. It was possible, sure, but there's no handbook. That's probably, that's awful. Good thing they have a sense of humor if they're listening to this. But there was no handbook on how to train somebody without a hand. Oh, thank God they have a sense of humor. So I walked into that one. But, oh man, I'm probably going to get a text on that. So there isn't necessarily clear-cut great resources. You just have to kind of experiment and try the movements yourself, talk it through with the person, see, like, do you still feel comfortable doing blah, blah, blah. And if they say no, move on, find something else. But continue to experiment and continue to focus on what they can do. Even if all they can do is something ridiculously tiny, small, that doesn't even seem significant, start with it and then progress it. Meaning, track it. Find a way to move it forward a little bit every week or every month. Give them a sense of success. Give yourself a sense of success. So if you're training with a limitation, you are not limited in the aspect that you can still improve. You can still make improvements. It might just not be in the way that you had originally wanted. So, if anybody is struggling with how to train a client or train themselves in regards to a certain limitation, please reach out. So I have been fortunate to be in a position to help people over the years, kind of work around these types of issues and stuff, and it's a very rewarding moment, and I am very excited and happy and very willing to work with anyone to ensure that they can kind of have that same feeling as well. So if there's anything in your way that you feel like is really kind of a hindrance and you're not sure how to work around it, reach out to us. Our email is brutalirongym@gmail.com, and I promise we'll help. We'll find a way. We'll find something that you can still do, that you can progress on and still have a sense of success, okay, and a sense of movement towards your goals. So just experiment, focus on what you can do. No matter what it is, start there and progress over time. If you need any ideas, reach out to us. We're always happy to help. Cool. Okay, if you like the podcast, please share it with family and friends. The more people we help, the happier the world will be. Also, if you like this information, you can find more from us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, Brutal Iron Gym. And if you have any questions, feedback, or suggestions, we'd love to hear from you. The podcast is for you, so I want to know what you want to learn about. You can tell us at our email, brutalirongym@gmail.com. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening. And thank you for watching.